Hello and welcome to this UniCourse video. My name's Ashley and today's topic will be conducting a SWOT analysis. So what we're going to go through today is a step-by-step approach on using a SWOT analysis in business. We'll clearly define what the acronym stands for and the different areas for use as well. The SWOT analysis or technique was credited to Albert Humphreys in the 1960s. Now, Albert was in charge of research and a project at Stanford University. What he did was he used data from leading organisations involved in long range planning processes and developed this tool to assist with that. So the SWOT analysis process generates information that's helpful in matching the internal and external organisation and the environment in which it works and operates. The SWOT itself is more of a data capture exercise. The analysis comes later. So we're going to go through that in a little bit more detail, but it's important to recognise that the strengths and weaknesses or internal and of intrinsic value, creating skills or assets or looking at resources or like capabilities within the organisation, and the external looks more about how them internal capabilities are relative to external factors, which are not like the external factors would not be created by the organisation but could have influence on the organisation as well. Now, a SWOT analysis can be used as a strategic tool. It could be used alongside different strategic tools as well, like the pestle analysis, Porter's 5 forces, or the ANSOF. And if you'd like any further information on that, have a look at our other live classes, our live class recordings on strategy, introduction to strategy and strategic analysis. So have a little look through them. But let's delve in to the topic of conducting a SWOT analysis. Now I'm going to try and keep this as simple as I possibly can, and I've pointed out on the presentation key things to consider when looking at the breakdown of this acronym. But bear in mind that the internal factors that influence the organisation are on the top and are basically areas that you have influence over, and the external are on the bottom. So the things that you have no influence over, but you need to be aware of. So when looking at the strengths, you will be making comparisons with your competitors. What makes you stand out? What's your unique service? What's your USP? What's your USO? Unique selling points, unique service offers, or what's your unique selling proposition? What is it that you do well that other organisations don't do well? So reviewing your strengths, it'll allow you to identify your current position in the industry and on the market. But also it will give you insight into those aspects that represent, clear advantage. This way you can leverage them even more, make use of them even more, and really, really capitalise on them strengths to make the most of them. When you're looking at weaknesses, you're looking at what you don't do so well. So ask yourself, what do others do better than you? What are other organisations? What are your competitors doing that maybe you could be doing? In what areas did they have clear advantage where you could, move forwards with? And it could be something that you offer but you can improve on. And this is why, strategic analysis and forward thinking, if you're always analysing the market, the industry, do an external analysis, it will keep you in front of your competitors. So you might be the person that people are working, that are benchmarking their market and strategy, for example, on. And think about things like, could you improve on software development? Could you improve on technology? Could you improve on the staff and their development maybe? And that brings you on to opportunities. The opportunities point out what could be possible by evaluating trends or what's currently out there and possibilities for improvement. Um, you can improve on practices. Now, that is, the external perspective, and it's not really things that you have influence over, but it's things that you can capitalise on to maybe use that opportunity to turn a weakness into a strength. So, they usually come from outside the organisation, but they could have really, really, really positive influences on your organisation as well. And then when you're looking at threats, you need to look at external influences on your organisation, ones that can impact on you negatively. If you aren't proactively looking for them, then they might just come up, and you might not be able to respond or react quickly enough. Think about, if we were to talk about technology, think about the BlackBerry and when iPhone came along and they found technology that was way ahead. Think about Polaroid cameras and phones with cameras on them. You need to be aware of threats in the market so you can react to them in time before it affects your organisation. If they are obvious, you can react quickly. But if they're not so obvious, sometimes you need to search for them. So keeping a close eye on threats will help you to get a better understanding of the market and what can be a potential threat for your business, to be able to plan for that, maybe in your projects or strategy meetings, or however you're going to go about planning to react to it. So, how can a SWOT be used in strategy? Now, I've already said it can be used alongside other analytical tools, like the Porter's 5 Forces framework that provides a model for industry analysis, business strategy development. But you've also got the pestle analysis, which can help you to delve a bit deeper into that opportunities and threats section of the SWOT. Or you could use the SWOT to touch on areas and then delve deeper with a pestle. So the pestle looks at the political, economical, social, technological, legal and environmental influences on an organisation. And the ANSOF matrix is a strategic planning tool that links the organisation's marketing strategy with its general strategic direction. So that could help as well, especially when you're looking at the opportunities as well. But the definitions of a SWOT can often overlap. They can even be subjective from one person to another. So it's sometimes good to do a SWOT analysis as a team with different experiences. Because think about it, if your organisation was, say, dependent on one supplier or one distributor, this could seem a strength to one person, maybe the sales team or the marketing team, as you'll be able to get it to the market quickly. But you can also consider it as a weakness because you'll be dependent on them. So from an operations manager's perspective, they might want to have a couple of distributors in case one of them has issues. Then they've always got a backup, so they've always got that contingency plan there. So it's important to be able to think about it from different perspectives, to then be able to analyse that information and be able to plan for the future, and think of options for development in that planning as well. But let's just have a little look at this in a little bit more detail. Using a SWOT, how can we use a SWOT to gather information? Now, I've provided a definition there of strategy because it's important to know that strategy is the direction and scope of an organisation over the long term, which achieves advantage in the changing environment through its configuration of resources and competencies. So, it's considering what's there, what do we need to do, where do we want to go, and how are we going to get there. That's what it's considering. And a SWOT provides information that helps in synchronising an organisation's capabilities and resources with the external environment in which the organisation operates. So it's often the first step in a more complex and deep analysis. As I said, Pestle, Ansoff, Porter's 5, that there's a number, and I'm going to give you a little bit more of a point in the direction of that on the next slide. But just think, about using a SWOT to gather information, how some areas where you may be asked to gather information and provide assistance with, say, decision making, include analysing the organisation's external environment, so providing information, data, research, assessing the internal capabilities, so that might be doing appraisals, reviews, working through who's hitting targets, who isn't, why, why not, are resources there, are they not there, and that's more about managing the people, and the making sure the right resources are there at the right time in the right place for them people as well. But then looking at what you can do then to assist with defining that strategy. So by providing all of this information, you can help to analyse the situation and then be able to help define the direction that strategy is going in, looking at specific goals and objectives that link to that mission, that organisation's purpose. And then this information can also help in aiding the implementation of strategy. So think about it. If you said that one of your strengths is that you've got a positive organisational structure, but one of your weaknesses is that you don't have the amount of staff that you need, well, there's an opportunity there to share their organisational culture, to be able to recruit more staff and get a bigger pool of of candidates for that maybe that position that you're looking for. So there's a number of different ways that you can use a SWOT to gather information, and how it's involved in strategy and managing the organisation. So where does it fit into strategy? Now, we've talked a little bit about internal and external analysis, internal and external. Now, you can look at the organisation and analyse it in two different ways. You have the internal capabilities and the resources, and you have the external environment and the impact. But just think about, okay, we've got strategic planning. We're going to then look at, analysing, the current state and what the future state is going to be. And then we're going to define that strategy by putting clear goals and then linking them clear goals to SMART objectives, objectives that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time bound. And if they are, you'll meet the goals, you'll achieve that vision, achieve the purpose, and then you're going to be resetting. But here's some examples of whereabouts within that process you can use different analytical tools. And next week's session is going to be on conducting a pestle analysis. So if you want more information on that, tune in next week for that. Okay, so I have gone into a lot of detail here, and it is quite wordy, this frame, but I just want to point out how in depth you can actually go with this. Now, think about strengths are positive, tangible and intangible attributes, internal and within the organisation's control. Think about and asking yourself, or looking at these different areas for strength, what value or what advantages or what clearly points you as someone who can rival the competitors. And you can look at it in different areas here. You can look at resources and assets, people's skills, capabilities, and then the competitive advantage within the market, which can include intellectual property, branding, innovative work and internal processes. There's so much that can be seen in here. But if you do ever need any help with completing a SWOT analysis, definitely look at these areas. Then when you're looking at weaknesses, there are also internal factors within an organisation. And from the organisation's, for the organisation's ability to attain the desired goal or purpose. So what stops them? So think about what stops me from getting to where we want to get. What could we improve on? Identify them vulnerabilities, and then you can work on them and turn them vulnerabilities into strengths. So again, looking at the same key areas, so looking at resources and assets, looking at the people, skills, capabilities, and that includes staff morale, that includes the expertise, that includes things like staff turnover as well. Um, what what affects your competitiveness? What affects, is it the quality of the work? Does it relate to brand? Does that look to, is it related to your reputation? And then you can think about the internal processes as well that link to something that you can work on. If your HR and operational processes at a weak point, then maybe you need to hire a different HR professional. Maybe you need to look at different avenues for advertising, different roles. Maybe you need to look at your interview process. There's a couple of different things you can look at there to strengthen that. Looking at opportunities and threats, I've kept this quite basic. And although we do look at the people, skills, and capabilities within this, you've got to think to yourself, what opportunities and trends can you capitalise on? And a lot of people do put like development options here for individuals within the workplace, but you can also look at things like partnerships and industry. So could you work and side by side with someone, improve your brand, improve your reputation? If you follow the same principles, would it help? Adopting a really good stakeholder within your organisation. Also, opportunities for growth and expansion. If you're putting that out there, you can make that so it's quite vague. Now, you don't want to be vague. You don't want to be that vague. Although, a lot of times I see SWOT analysis and they just bullet point it. That's fine, but then you need to elaborate on that. If you're going to be completing a SWOT analysis in any of your assignments, and that SWOT analysis can be an organisational SWOT analysis, a department SWOT analysis. It could even be a personal SWOT analysis or a SWOT analysis on one of your team members. If you're, looking at a unit like managing individuals development, for example, don't just give me bullet points. I want you to be able to tell me what them bullet points are about. So you might say a threat could be losing employees to competitors. So you might want to evaluate that at the bottom, but really analyse it. So say, we've been losing employees to competitors, and through research we've found not only are they offering more money, but they might be offering an incentives, or they might be offering hybrids working or better working hours. So it's important to be able to know what these threats are, to be able to maybe then review your processes and see how you can do it a little bit better. And then when you're looking at the threats, you could then link that in with a more in-depth external analysis, such as a pestle analysis as well. Some questions I want you to consider before completing a SWOT. I want you to think about why it's important, okay? I want you to think about, why is it important? What can it do? What impacts can it have on the organisation? Okay, so I've noted down here it provides a simple but powerful framework to identify your strengths and weaknesses, but make sure that a lot of people complete a SWOT analysis, leave it on the shelf. It needs to be used. It needs to be used. I mean, in one of the places that I worked in a couple of years ago, we used to have every departmental manager had a meeting and used to complete a SWOT analysis at the end of every quarter just on their departments, and then their departments will go to the senior leaders and say, right, this is what we're doing well, this is what we're not going to, these are the opportunities that we think we've got, and these are the threats that might get in the way. So you might want to look at it from a departmental point of view because it is quite a simple tool. Research has shown that the most difficult part of a SWOT analysis is the opportunities section, and it can be because it can take time. You know, it can take time to research the market. I mean, you could say the same for threats if you were really looking at the threats in detail, but you've got to research the external environment, and it's often quite easy to do research on the internal environment. You could get feedback questionnaires off your staff. You can have one-to-ones with your staff. You can look at the supply chain and see if it can be done any better. So there's a number of different things. But if you find in one area, like for example, if you was to find that there was weaknesses in your supply chain, then you may be able to go and look at the opportunities then, but with the suppliers, maybe some of them might offer you better deals, so it could end up working out well in the end. But you might want to research your opportunities after looking at your strengths and your and your weaknesses. So the process itself, I've set here a 9-step process, and you don't have to follow this process. Obviously, everyone uses different processes. Some just a basic sit down with a template and write what you're writing, but it's important to be able to decide how the information is going to be collected and by who. And we've got a couple of useful and different types of templates as well on Moodle that can help with your analysis. Identify appropriate sources of information. Now, you can just go and sit down and just write bullet points and then go and look a little bit further and delve a little bit deeper into them points that you've been made aware of. And then go a bit further, like the example I've just given with the supply chain. But it's also, you can gather the information and then use that template so you've got a really good guideline for it. You can also plot the findings, so you can think about what's a priority, what needs to be looked at first, what needs to be looked at second, and think about how decisions can be made from them. Identify the most important points, so it might be, this is clearly important, this isn't so important, but like for example a threat, if say like there was changes that years ago there was a big change to the Data Protection Act, that might be the top one, and you might need to look at opportunities for training courses for maybe HR, just so they can be up to date with the recent changes, so then they could change maybe policies and procedures in accordance with that, so it doesn't turn into a weakness and it does turn into a strength, because they're fully in front of the external influences on the organisation. And that's where it brings into identifying the strategic options. Think about how could you use this information to strategize and put you ahead. The discussion document, I think, is really important. I mean, in some places they just have a follow-up meeting and they'll have meeting minutes with action points from it. But a discussion document can be shared throughout the whole organisation, so people know if there's changes happening, it's due to an analysis that's just taken place. And it's only going to be, the changes are only going to get made to turn the weaknesses into strengths, or really capitalising on them opportunities and making sure that threat doesn't get in the way of meeting the objectives, the goals, and the purpose of the organisation. And then each department or senior manager or individual, if they had a say on that discussion document, they could disseminate it and discuss the findings, and then that might go back and impact strategy again. But deciding on the activities and the priority in the context of the organisation's goals and values is probably key, and that final point should be stuck in everybody's mind when they're conducting a SWOT analysis as well. Before we finish, I'd like to just point you in the direction of one of the resources that I found through tools here. Now, what this is, that it's called the Towers Matrix. It's derived from the SWOT analysis model, and it includes the same elements: the internal strengths and weaknesses of the organisation and the external opportunities and threats of the organisation. and it's constructed obviously differently, and it's used more in a strategic way. So the acronym TOWS is a variant of a SWOT analysis, but this one was developed by an American international business professor called Heinz Werrick, I think. And this matrix is aimed at developing strategic options from an external internal analysis, and is a practical tool. And I think it's quite good because it points clearly where the strategies are, particularly useful in marketing and administration. Um, that part of the organisation, that function, in my eyes anyway. So how it's different, um, where the SWOT begins with the internal analysis, the TOWS starts at the external environmental analysis. So I spoke to you about before about how you can use one to link with the other, and that can help to form a strategy. But it starts with the external environment, the threats and the opportunities, and they're examined first. So from the start, the organisation gets a pretty clear picture of the environment and the opportunity, and often, as I said before, it takes a bit of research to do that part first. So you can then use them to say, okay, after we've done the threats, and after we've looked at the external research and analysis, we can then start to look at what strengths and weaknesses we've got to link with that, and that helps to then form the strategy. So it is a little bit more in depth. The external analysis is linked to the internal analysis really well within this house matrix, and it's helpful for organisations to make decisions better, making the most of opportunities, and protecting itself better against threats. I mean, I found this more useful because I feel like it's more of an actionable SWOT analysis, whereas a SWOT analysis, some of the templates that we have are basic templates that just capture the data. This formats clear actions based on that. So the first two boxes on the right hand side, the strengths, the weaknesses. Sorry, the final two boxes, they could just be the bullet points, and the opportunities and threats, they could just be the bullet points. But the internal ones are the actions to respond to them. So it'll be what's a weakness? Well, what's an opportunity that we have to respond to that? Well, what's a strength? Well, what's an opportunity that we have to utilise or capitalise on that strength? So it shows that linkage a little bit more, a little bit more in detail, I believe. So let's point out the advantages and disadvantages of the SWOT. Now, it is a simple framework. If you use the TOWS template, it's a little bit more complex, as I've just mentioned, but it is a simple framework. It can be done quickly. It encourages people to think innovatively, think outside the box a little bit, and it allows managers to focus on strengths and build on opportunities. It is flexible. As I said, it can be done on individuals, it can be done on yourself. You could do a personal SWOT, it could be done on the department, it can be done on a project, it can be done on an organisation as a whole. So there's many different advantages and clear disadvantages as well. So industries change quickly. The pace of change make it difficult for you to anticipate developments, and it can sometimes take time to do a SWOT analysis if you're trying to research the market to look for them opportunities and threats. Sometimes it does lack structure, but at the same time you can use templates to help with that structure. But some vital elements might be missed, or they might, overlap and be subjective as well. And in order to be effective, the process needs to be repeated, I believe, continually. I think quarterly, as we did in one of the old companies I worked for, that was a really good method to do it. quarterly, because things change internally and externally quite often. There are many of resources and examples out there of SWOTs, and if you were really wanting to have a little look at one that's more industry specific to you, you could probably find it online. Here's one about Coca-Cola. And we all know that Coca-Cola's got a really strong brand, so that would be like one of the strengths. And they offer a variety of products, but you know it also says that one of the weaknesses is the difficulty to keep up with the health industry. And as you can see, these are clear points, and this is the data collection. So it says for threats, companies are offering healthy alternatives to Coca-Cola and other soft drinks, but this is clearly identified. Okay, here's the threat, here's the weaknesses, but it doesn't help you to analyse what you're going to do about it. So it's about using basic information, data, to be able to analyse and plan for the future. I've also given you an example of Airbus as well, which is one of the largest airline manufacturers in and one of the most successful in 2019. And that looks at saying it's got a global network, it's got really good international presence, but it also says one of the threats is its strong competition from Boeing. So what can they do about that? That might the fact that they've noticed, well, this is the strength, but this is the threat. How can they link them together to create an action to make sure that they stay the largest airliner? And that might link closely with marketing as well. So you can think about, well, this links with this, can we pass this to this department to be able to capitalise on the strength or to turn that weakness into a strength. So what we've talked about today is we've broken down the acronym SWOT. We've talked about how that analytical tool can be used in strategy, and we have talked about the linkage between different methods and the advantages and disadvantages of using a SWOT analysis. Now, remember, conducting a SWOT analysis with bullet points is absolutely great for you to be aware of the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats, but it's what you do with that information that's important within your department, within your organisation, or for that individual if you're completing it as a personal SWOT analysis. If you would like any more information on conducting a SWOT analysis or how that links in with any specific unit that you're completing as part of one of your qualifications here at UniCourse, you can contact me direct or give the office a call. Thank you for tuning in to our video today on conducting a SWOT analysis, and please tune in to our YouTube channel and our playlist for further videos similar to this one. Thank you. Bye.